Do I need workers' compensation insurance? Everyone's answers here are pretty straightforward and correct. Most states do require workers' compensation insurance. There may be exceptions if you are the owner and only employee. The penalties for not having workers' comp can be steep, and they get bigger and bigger the longer you are out of compliance. I wrote a blog recently on insurance requirements in general since I found this to be incredibly and stressful to navigate. My experience is based on New York, where both workers' comp and disability are mandated, but here is what I wrote. Insurance, types and what you're required to have insurance can be a big rabbit hole. I'm still learning about it now and getting my own business properly set up, but here are some of the things I've learned. I think of insurance in a couple ways. People-based coverage. These are types of insurance that are directly related to the people you employ. This includes workers' compensation, disability, accidental death and dismemberment (AD&D), employee practices and liability (EPL), and health insurance, company-based coverage. This is insurance related to your business operations. It includes general liability, also known as corporate liability, errors and omissions (E&O), investment specific. When you go for financing, you may also be required to take on additional policies for your leadership team, including key person insurance, sometimes called keyman policy, and directors and officers insurance for a startup that can't even afford payroll and basic marketing services. Opting in for all of these things borders on insane. It truly makes your head spin. So, after considering all the types out there, the first question you should ask is this: what am I legally bound to carry? I'm pretty sure in 100% of U.S. states, companies are legally required to have workers' compensation insurance for all payroll employees. In a few states, including New York, disability is also required. Do not mess with the workers' comp requirement. Let me tell you a story. One that has yet to end. I purchased a workers' comp policy for the LLC I initially created. Turns out, since I only had 2 employees and both of us were owners of the business, I actually didn't need that policy. When we merged that LLC into the C Corp we now have, I assumed the policy would transfer. I was wrong. A few months later, I received an audit notice and a big fat fine from New York State. To the tune of $3,000, it could have been $15,000. Turns out, since the employee tax number changed, the old policy didn't transfer. And, since the C Corp has more than 2 shareholders, even though all the employees in the US are owners, we are still bound to have coverage. I am still appealing this one as it was a genuine mistake caused by an overly complex law and unusual set of circumstances. But, if you're reading this, please learn from me. I also screwed up on the disability insurance piece. However, I was able to get a policy backdated for the year coverage. I paid an extra $200 for processing, but that's much better than the state fine. As you may have heard, health insurance coverage is also mandatory. However, the laws on that are much trickier to navigate, and I will dedicate a separate blog post to that. The bottom line is that, if you have full-time employees on your payroll, there is a minimum amount you need to cover. What should I think hard about carrying? General or corporate liability insurance is something we should have signed up for soon. In the end, we ended up paying about $700 for a full year of coverage. But the real benefit for us was the clause on our coverage for what is called HNOA, hired or non-owned automobile. Being a new business, we spend lots of time on the road for sales meetings, client kickoffs, etc. And we're spending a lot of money on rental car insurance. Your credit card will generally cover loss damage waiver, but HNOA helps in the event of an accident with another vehicle. It only takes one of those for this policy to pay itself off for 10 years. What can I skip? That depends on your appetite for risk and what stage you are. When you take on employees, you also take on some inherent risk, and employee-based policies become way more important. Then again, when you're very small, maybe those are luxuries you can put off. E&O is probably a good idea if you're providing a software product and/or data that has a big impact on a business function. But, until you have real active customers, is not needed. Key person and directors and officers insurance is going to be a term in your financing rounds, so it isn't really necessary to have these until you get to that stage. Recommendation: if you are a small but growing business, consider doing a PEO. I've actually done a huge amount of research on this and I'm becoming a big advocate of the PEO model for startups. Here are a few of the things to know. PEO equals Professional Employment Organization. They are basically outsourced HR, benefits departments. They act as an aggregator to get better rates on insurance and, in exchange, manage everything from payroll to insurance policies and health coverage. Standard with a PEO you'll get payroll, workers' comp, disability, EPL, AD&D, health insurance options and even small life insurance policies. You can upgrade policies as you grow and choose how much coverage you give, but they take away the burden of compliance and administration. If you opt for a PEO, you have to use them for payroll and all benefits administration. You can't selectively opt out of certain services. There is an admin fee associated with PEOs, but I have spreadsheets on the comparison here and, trust me, the fee is offset by the savings on insurance policies. Yes, if you've even a single employee, then you need a workers' compensation insurance. In most U.S. states, employers are obliged by law to have workers' compensation insurance. Even in the states where there is no obligation for employers to have workers' compensation insurance, the employers should have workers' compensation insurance for their own benefit. If you don't have a workers' compensation insurance, then you'll be responsible to pay for damages incurred by an employee in the workplace administered by you. You can do everything possible for workplace safety, but you'll never be able to guarantee that there will be no workplace accident. For any business, paying for the damages can be harmful. Sometimes, damages can be millions. This can lead to shutting down any small business. Having a workers' compensation insurance is also a way to show your workers that you care about them. If you're competing with other companies to hire a certain employee that will be a good addition to your company, then not having a workers' compensation can make you less competitive. If your worker doesn't have money to recover from injuries, then you need to hire a new employee. A new employee is likely to be less effective than an experienced employee. Employers have a legal responsibility to their employees to make the workplace safe. However, accidents happen even when every reasonable safety measure has been taken. To protect employers from lawsuits resulting from workplace accidents and to provide medical care and compensation for lost income to employees hurt in workplace accidents, in almost every state, businesses are required to buy workers' compensation insurance. Workers' compensation insurance covers workers injured on the job, whether they're hurt on the workplace premises or elsewhere, or in auto accidents while on business. It also covers work-related illnesses. Workers' compensation provides payments to injured workers, without regard to who was at fault in the accident, for time lost from work and for medical and rehabilitation services. It also provides death benefits to surviving spouses and dependents. Each state has different laws governing the amount and duration of lost income benefits, the provision of medical and rehabilitation services, and how the system is administered. For example, in most states, there are regulations that cover whether the worker or employer can choose the doctor who treats the injuries and how disputes about benefits are resolved. Workers' compensation insurance must be bought as a separate policy. Although in-home business and business owners policies (BOPs) are sold as package policies, they don't include coverage for workers' injuries.